Well, hello again. Pastor Ray Barnett here with you, and I'm glad that you could be with me on the Oasis. As always, I wish you a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening, depending on what time you're watching this broadcast. Today, I would like to talk to you about the shocking truth of the life and death of Elvis Presley. You know, the world has a way of creating an illusion of happiness, an illusion of peace, an illusion of success. But most times, a great many times, it is simply that, an illusion. We have people that can create a persona that gives you the impression, once again, that they have it all together, when in truth, they don't. Elvis Presley was a man who I can say, I believe was truly a good man. I mean, in the sense of, he was genuinely affable, he was likable. No doubt, everybody knows that he was talented. He had the trifecta of being good looking, immensely talented, and again, that personality that could just draw you in. At least I speak for myself, that made you just really like him. But the truth of the matter is this: Elvis Presley was hopelessly drug addicted. Some years ago, just a few years ago, I read what is considered to be the definitive biography of Elvis Presley, written by an author by the name of Peter Guralnick. It's a 2-volume series that honestly is thick enough to match some books on theology that I have. And as I read his biography, I was genuinely moved to compassion for this man who many of us, at least in my generation, genuinely admired. A friend of mine who watches this broadcast on a regular basis and I were talking a few weeks ago about the time we went. There was 4 of us, himself, another friend, and then my wife and myself, who at the time was my girlfriend. We went to one of his last concerts that was given on Long Island at the Nassau Coliseum. And what a thrill it was to watch him perform his songs, to watch him on stage, to watch the way he could draw his fans and his audience right into the entire production. However, again, the truth of the life of Elvis Presley is that he was not only hopelessly drug addicted, but he was also a very lonely man. Did you know that Elvis Presley could never spend time alone by himself? He would always have to have someone in the house with him, and on many occasions he would pick up a girl, sometimes young, meaning 20s, young to him, that would sleep with him. But he would explain to them that he wasn't about to have sex with them, at least on some occasions. But he just needed that constant affirmation, and he needed the assurance that he was not alone in this world. If you are or were a fan of Elvis Presley, I would highly recommend you read the biography, which is now considered to be the definitive biography of Elvis Presley, written by Peter Guralnick. The truth of his life, and then of course his death, was that he was a drug addicted man who was very, very lonely and very much afraid. At one time he was appointed as the drug czar for our country by President Richard Nixon. The reasons for this I assumed to be purely political, because his drug addiction was well known to many people at the time. And yet, in a very ironic and paradoxical fashion, he was chosen to be the leader against drugs, as the drug czar, appointed by President Richard Nixon. Loneliness, drug addicted. Elvis Presley would have cigar boxes, or boxes that are like a cigar box, filled with amphetamines and barbiturates and anything, and he would pass them out to his friends. Many times his friends didn't want them, but they were there in copious quantities. And it is very sad to me because, once again, I genuinely liked the man, and when I read his biography, a very ponderous volume, I felt a lot of compassion for this man because, again, I thought that he was a genuinely likable individual, as well as obviously a very talented individual. People like the Beatles, when they first met Elvis Presley, and they were at at least the beginning of their popularity, they were thrilled to meet Elvis Presley and talked about it in such a fashion that, though they themselves were superstars and becoming superstars, they felt they had met the ultimate superstar. But here's the thing. Many, many people, not just the rich and the famous, can create an illusion to give you the impression that they're very happy, very contented, and very successful, when indeed, if success is defined by man, we may concede the point and say, yes, they were successful, they had money, they had popularity, they had fame, people surrounding them at all times and wanting to be their friend and wanting to be near them. But in the end, it was all an illusion. How tragic for Elvis to have died in the bathroom sitting on a toilet bowl. Keeled over. He was reading some type of, well, I guess I could use the word New Age, but it was a type of, not salacious, but just, a type of nonsense book. I remember seeing a film, a short documentary 40 years ago, in which his stepbrother, Raymond, was telling the story that Elvis came into a hotel, and of course people recognized him, but there was a little girl who recognized Elvis. She walked over to him. This was the story related by his stepbrother. She walked over to Elvis and she says, "You need Jesus." Later on in the hotel room and the discussion with him and his stepbrother Raymond, he said, "Did you hear what that little girl said?" And of course he said yes. And he said, "She's right." Now think about that. For those of you familiar, old enough to remember, or like myself to have actually seen him perform, anything about his life. Here's a man who we may say, like Solomon, had it all, yet the message of a little girl telling him that he needed Jesus, he conceded the point and told his stepbrother, she's right. Did you know that every single night, there with members of the Memphis Mafia and others who are around other of his band and so forth, every night, did you know what they sang? Gospel hymns. Every night. Around the piano, Elvis would gather his group, and there they would sing the old gospel hymns. You see, Jesus is the longing of every person's heart and soul. We see in Jesus a composure. We see in Jesus a true peace. No matter what is going on, he's not creating an illusion, but that he is, as we would use the operative phrase, Jesus is the real deal. There are takeaways from this story of Elvis' life that applies to you and to me. First of all, none of us are exempt from these private struggles that we have. And again, even on the smallest level, your level, my level, we can try to create an illusion that we have it all together. We smile, and I hope that you smile. Smiling is a good thing. But it's meant to convey, at least in some cases, an illusion that all is well. When in the heart of hearts of men, they know that it's not. Some years ago, I was in the prison, when I was in prison ministry for 7 years. I was doing a meeting that had about 300 inmates packed into the auditorium that evening when we were doing some songs, and then I was preaching. And I said this to these men. I said, you know, we all know that everybody in jail is innocent. I mean, that's a given if you're in prison ministry or you work in prisons or if you've been in jail. And I said, well, you may be innocent on this particular charge. I don't know. I'm not the judge. But I said, one thing I do know. When you go back to your cell at night, you cry. And I told them, I said, you can't cry in the population because, well, that's a sign of weakness. That's going to get you in trouble. But I said, when you're alone, when that gate crashes, you're alone by yourself, you're sad, you're depressed, you're anxious, and some cry. That night when I gave what we call an altar call to receive Christ, the entire place came up, so much so that even the correction officers who were there, including one of the captains, were coming to me one by one after the population, the inmate population, were let go and back to their respective places, their cells. Some of the COs were coming to me and asking me, hey, Rev, where's your church? Hey, Rev, when's your services? Or when can we come? Is anybody welcome? Which, of course, in the church, everybody's welcome. And the point is that whether it's an inmate in prison that has to put on an illusion of toughness and strength, and I'm not saying that many are not tough and many are not strong, but the human nature of us all is that we have private struggles with sin. We have private struggles with sorrow, with depression, and with anxieties and worries and regrets. You see, even here on YouTube, we have many YouTube creators that will, I don't want to use the word pander, but they know what you're looking for. So they create on their program, at least some do, not all, some create an illusion. This is the man with all the answers. This is the man that has it all together. We could say, as we used to say when we were kids, when I grow up, I want to be like him. But I can tell you, if you were privy to listen to the type of things that I hear on a regular basis, and this past week or so, it was almost on a daily basis, including today, and over the weekend, and so on. Your heart breaks for the fact that so many live an illusory life, trying to create an image that is not reality. I can say from 44 years experience now, Christ alone gives you peace. When that little girl came to Elvis Presley, perhaps and arguably at that time maybe the most famous man in the entire world, like Solomon of old, she said, you need Jesus. And then later, according to the testimony of his stepbrother, Raymond, he said, you know, she's right. Just think about that. Think of all the fawning fans, the fainting women, even the men who just love this performer, this entertainer, Elvis Presley. And he was taken down by the simple statement of a little girl, you need Jesus. And his admission later on, again, according to the testimony of his stepbrother, saying, you know, she's right. What I want to say to you today is this. Whatever you see with your eyes may not be the case with people. Whether they be in government or entertainment or they be in some position where the illusion is created. Now look at, when it comes to music, for instance, there's no doubt about the talent. I mean, sound is sound. It's either good or it's bad. Music appeals to you or it doesn't appeal to you. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about inside. Inside, where the human being really exists in spirit and in soul. There's a longing and there's a hunger for something deeper. And that longing and that desire is for God Himself. It was Augustine in his Confessions that wrote in the opening line these words. He said that our hearts, and I'm paraphrasing his statement, he says that our hearts are empty until they're filled with you. Again, that's a paraphrase. That we were created for you, and until we have you, life will always be either the illusion of peace and happiness and contentment, or in Jesus Christ, you can have the real thing. These, I believe, are just some of the lessons we can learn from that man who, once again, I genuinely thought was a good guy, talented. That's my impression. But the illusion of happiness was not the reality. You can have the reality by receiving Christ as your Savior and your Lord. Not to the crowd, not what your church does, or if you don't go to church. Jesus Christ fills that gap, as Augustine said in a much more eloquent way than I just put it in his Confessions. Our heart is longing all the time and will never be satisfied until it has you. Learn a lesson, whether it's here on YouTube or watching these famous performers or the leaders of governments or wealthy people, whoever they may be, who have created, whether intentionally or unintentionally, an illusion of peace, of contentment, and of success. Or, better, you could have the real thing. You may never have their money. For the great majority of us, we'll never have their fame, but we can have the peace of Jesus Christ. Let me pray for you today so that you don't have to struggle anymore, either creating an illusion for people around you that everything's fine, whether that's intentional or unintentional, but rather have that sense of, as the songwriter said, Horatio Spafford, it is well with my soul. Father, I pray for my friends. I pray for those who've watched this broadcast today, that they will come to the realization that life is often just an illusion created by people intentionally and unintentionally to put forth an image that does not match the reality, but rather help my friends today to find that reality, that Jesus is the answer for the world today. I hope that what I'm doing here with these videos is helping you. I hope that you can learn a lesson from not just the life of Elvis Presley, but from most people that you're watching, and that you have the reality of peace with God. As always, I invite you to subscribe to the channel if you wish. Hit the notification bell, and I do appreciate the thumbs up as it keeps us on the YouTube radar. Until tomorrow, Lord willing, I pray that you have the peace of Christ. And again, with God's help and grace, I'll see you here tomorrow again on the Oasis. Until then, God bless.